Writing is about the process. It's about listening and recognizing remnants of your story in the stories of others. When we share our stories with each other, we share the resonance of the human experience. The By Firelight podcast is your invitation to join our circle, a circle of writers, poets, seekers, and storytellers as we capture our living in words. This multifaceted living with joy, grief, love, growth, and loss is shared among us in your legacy, your story. The things you choose to do with your days as they unfold matter here. I'm your host, Betsy Delzer. I'm many things, but in this gathering, I'm a painter, poet, and writer, and I'm honored to be your guide through these episodes. Together, we'll find our muses in the rich and heart-expanding conversations with incredible guests, many who are like minds and all outrageously inspiring hearts. When you press play, you're here in the circle to share this space with us. By Firelight.
Rachel Weisel is the creator of Happy Arranging, a popular Instagram account focused on making flower arranging fun and approachable using Trader Joe's flowers and things you already have at home. She's the author of Beautiful Bouquets with Trader Joe's Flowers, a flower cookbook with 45 step-by-step bouquet recipes for everyday life, holidays, and special occasions. Based in New York City, Rachel loves finding small ways to add creativity into her everyday life. Well, Rachel, I am so excited to meet you and have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I have to tell you, I found you, just like I have found so many of my other guests, on Instagram. I am a big flower girly, so I just want everybody to know, even before we get started, I'm a huge fan. And so I'm so excited to just get to know you a little bit and hear about your journey as a floral arranger, designer, book writer, all of it. I'm just really, really excited for this time together.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for following me.
Yeah, of course. So I love to start out with a question that I ask all my guests, which is just like thinking about a younger version of you or an older version. So either imagining the future or thinking back to the past. And what would you want to tell us today as a form of introduction or just maybe even an empowering statement as we get started?
Well, I hope my older self would just let me know it all works out in ways you can't even imagine. So have a ton of fun. And I think my younger self would probably remind me, because this is a lesson I have to keep relearning in life, that trying doesn't need to be hard. For me, trying is just committing to showing up, but it shouldn't be too hard in any one moment. And you can come back tomorrow and try again.
I love that. Okay, so there's a fun segue that I want to take, and we'll just dive right into the floral world. So for the people who are my regular listeners and then also our newer listeners, I started my journey in the working world in flower shops. I started in it was like a mall flower shop, and it was actually just called The Flower Shop. And I started at age 15. One of the things that we would joke about in the flower shop were the cooler elves. And it's so funny. We would talk about how, like, you know how you can belabor an arrangement and you can go over it and over it. And then sometimes it's just like, you know what? We need to put this away and let the cooler elves deal with it. Because the next day, right? Like you can take it out and you see it a little differently, or the frustration perhaps that you were working through has moved to the side. But it's just a funny connection to that idea of trying again, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things I like so much about flowers is that since they're ephemeral, you have to just do it and you can do another one again soon. You can't let it be too precious or too deep just because there isn't the time, in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking of a couple of moments of just, again, in the form of introduction, a couple of moments that have stood out to me with flowers. And then I just can't wait to tell people who you are and what you're doing in the world. But I was thinking a little bit about 2020 and when the shutdown happened and how we all responded to that so differently. You know, I mean, some people really kind of like caved in and they cocooned, you know, and got really like, oh, you know, like we're just going to close in and try to take care of the people inside our walls and figure that out. I was like, I need to create something right now. And I ended up, ironically, going to Trader Joe's and buying tons of flowers and creating like micro bouquets and then delivering them on the doorsteps of family and friends, because it was just such a scary time when everything shut down. I had so many people sending me texts and photos of like, look where my flowers ended up, and this is where they are in my home. And it was just a moment where I was thinking like, where can I connect with Rachel right away so she knows that I'm in your crew. I'm in your circle for sure. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
All of it, everything about that. That is, yeah, it's such a inherent joy and like ease
Mm-hmm.
with flowers. And oh, that I wish I was doing that. That's what I'll say. I was a cocooner, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, I think we all had to just do what we had to do in the moment, right? But just so we can just jump off and let people know who you are, you have become, I'm just going to use the word famous for creating bouquets with Trader Joe's flowers. And you have just reel after reel and visual after visual on Instagram of just these stunning bouquets. So I'd love to hear about your journey. Like, did you start as a florist? Did you start at 15 in a flower shop? Like, what was that like?
Well, I almost feel intimidated because I think you have even more experience than me, but I definitely have a strong creative background. And about 3 years ago, I was working in a healthcare tech job, and I was starting to feel pretty burnt out, and there was just a very little hands-on creativity and some of that like even like fun creativity in my day to day. But I was also a bit rusty and kind of in a place where I was like, ooh, if I pick up a paintbrush, my taste level right now really exceeds my skill. And that sounds very hard. So I knew I needed something creative in my life. And I was definitely one of those people who always bought like one bunch of flowers every week. So I was like, okay, we're going to buy a few more. And I started an Instagram account mostly to hold myself accountable for like doing the creative thing. And I committed to making 2 to 3 bouquets a week. And then it just organically started to evolve, which was really fun. And then I hit a certain point and I was like, okay, let me see if I can do this and like make this a thing, which was fun to interact with people. And it was also fun to have like a good excuse to keep buying more flowers and practicing. And now I'm just kind of addicted, I guess.
Wow. Okay, so wind it back for me just a little bit because I am a detail girl. So there's a point like you're buying a few bunches of flowers. What do you do with them? Like you just keep them around your home? Or are you giving them away?
I gave a lot to strangers in the beginning. Like I would just be on the street and be like, "Oh, do you want flowers today?" Which was also so fun just to like see people's reactions. I post a little bit less and I'm a little bit more judicious about what I buy these days. So my neighbors definitely get a ton of flowers. I have flowers in my bathroom at all times, which is like my favorite spot because it makes me feel fancy. And then I usually try to give like one other bouquet to like a friend a week is kind of my usual, if I don't have an event or an occasion or a project to kind of fuel the flowers.
So, yeah, talk to me about that. Did you end up starting to do events? And do you do weddings or do you do some of the typical things that flowers are connected to?
I teach Zoom classes, which I have a lot of fun with, and I do some in person classes as well. I have done a couple of weddings. I think there's a reason florists charge a lot of money for weddings. It is a lot of work. I do some, but it's not quite my sweet spot, I would say.
Really just the arranging and creating these beautiful bouquets. That's kind of your focus.
I've learned the logistics of transporting them just weighs me down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So we have this moment where you're in the health tech industry, you're getting burned out, you start, can I use the word playing? Like kind of playing, right? Like you're playing a
Yeah,
little bit and
absolutely.
experimenting. How does it become something where you can live in New York City? And, like how do you make that leap into this becoming your like gainful employment?
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of in the middle of that, if I'm going to be honest. I was lucky that I did work in tech, so I had kind of a buffer. And my original plan was just to, when I left work, I was like, okay, give yourself 6 months, chill, have a good time, don't worry too much. And in that 6 months, my account grew pretty quickly in one of those like serendipitous ways. And I also got a book deal. So I think the combination kind of gave me that confidence to focus in on what I was doing a little bit. And I get some partnerships that like totally surprise me. Like people pay me to use their music in a reel. I was like, sure, choose any music you want, guys. Have at it, which is really fun and exciting. So things kind of pop up and seem to usually work themselves out, which is really nice.
So it sounds like you're pretty self-taught when it comes to the arranging of flowers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely in terms of the arranging of flowers, I do want to give a lot of credit. I took tons of art classes, even in like elementary school through high school, college, and at the Art Students League as an adult. So I think some of the things like color theory and understanding scale and texture just are probably coming to me what feels naturally, but were definitely taught to me by really talented, smart artists. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that influences there too.
Yeah. Composition, balance, all of that really comes into play when you're creating an arrangement. And one of the things I'm thinking about is just the temporary nature. Like we were talking a little bit earlier about the brush strokes and, the taste of being a painter. With floral arranging, you can start over so much more easily than wiping a canvas clean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot in the more recent years, I've taken a bunch of collage classes, and the process actually feels kind of similar because in collage, we do a lot of like, oh, you gather your like stuff and then you start sorting things and you lay it out and then you mix it around and then you lay it out again and then you glue. And I think kind of that process feels similar. It's like, oh, you go to the store, you pick out the ones you like, you kind of like process them and clean the flowers, which is like similar to the sorting. And then you like assemble them and lay them out. And then you're like, oh, okay, cool. Now it's actually done.
Yeah. All right. So I have a few different lanes I want to go down. And I'd like to, like, there's the artistic part that I would like to be curious about. I am curious about that 6 months of serendipity and the book deal. That definitely piques my interest. But then also, like, there's a small detail, and that is you've kind of honed in on Trader Joe's. Is there a partnership there, or is there something where, like, no, not necessarily?
No, I mean, the crew members in the store are all very nice to me. I have never spoken to anyone outside of them. I'm happy to use flowers from anywhere. They're
Yeah.
just the cheapest and around the corner. It's kind of that simple.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people go to Trader Joe's for florals, right? Like for occasions, but also just for their bathrooms to feel fancy. Yeah.
Yeah, they have such a great selection, and it's definitely more affordable than anything else in Manhattan. So it's even the bodegas, and I love bodega flowers too. They're just usually a little more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the same is true for our like local floral, like farmer markets. So you're walking into a Trader Joe's. Let's just say somebody's really interested that who's listening, because I have a feeling we'll draw the listeners who are like into all of this, right? What for a first timer who's walking in and just like, okay, I heard these two ladies talking about this on a podcast. What are you going to point them towards, or be like, hey, make sure to put this in. Let's go beginner and then maybe an advanced version. Okay. So like, what are they going to put in their basket to take home and try if you've never done this before and you're just being curious?
Start with what you like. That's my number one rule always. And then get at least 3 bunches if it's your first time. Because like you should try something. Start with one you like, grab 2 more, make sure they look okay together. Double check that nothing's falling off the flowers, like leaves or petals. Like look at the bottom of that like little plastic bag it's in and make sure it's looking pretty clean.
Mm-hmm.
Also smell them, because there's some types of flowers that will look good, but they start to smell musty before you can even see that they're not at peak. Definitely smell them. It's also a good way to make sure you like the smell, because some flowers have scents and you might not like them. I like mixing colors. I like mixing different sizes and textures and scales. So I don't think you can do anything wrong. Start with what you like and then know you can try another one next week. So you're gonna keep going.
What if they have just maybe like a super simple vase at home, or like something, a container of some kind, or they're just not really even sure where to put them when they get home? Is there something like that you're like, hey, here's a great starter?
I use things that I have around all the time, from those like adorable clay French yogurt pots to my cereal bowls with I just those often need some chicken wire for, so that might be a little bit more advanced, to just a regular any vase that you've always had. I think something I've discovered is that be willing to cut the stems a little shorter than you might have thought. It's okay for some of the blooms to sit kind of right at the edge of the lip of your vase. And that sometimes helps. And I've gotten that comment from people a lot of like, oh, now I cut them shorter, everything looks better. So sometimes you need a haircut. So if you put them in and you're like, it's not looking the way I want it to, don't be afraid to chop them down a little.
Yeah. I would do it sort of on the outside of the vase first, right? So like, let's say you unwrap everything. You've got these 3 different things. You're kind of pulling it together. Then I pull it together and then I sort of hold it up next to the counter where the vase is. And I'm like looking at the height, right? Do you have some rules or some suggestions around that?
Yeah. So I like that idea a lot. What I usually end up doing, and probably because I'm reading on my coffee table, so everything's already lower, is I'll kind of have my little pile of flowers, like the bouquet that's ready to go, and I take one off the top and I turn it upside down so I can see like where the like flower bloom is, like next to the vase, and I make that cut and I put that one on top of the pile and cut everything so the bottom matches.
Oh yeah. What happens when so we're still in the basic bouquet. We're still in the basic bouquet.
Yes.
Do you have I was trained under a few people who were like, gotta green in first, like start with your greens, start with, do you have some kind of like sequential rules technically?
So I actually usually do the greens last, which I know is like really counter to what formal flower arranging tells you. I have since read many books and watched many YouTube videos, but I think part of that is because when you buy supermarket flowers, the pricing is kind of similar between the greens and the flowers. And I end up buying a lot more color just because that's what I'm drawn to. So if I'm doing like that kind of standard pile that I do outside the vase, I I don't know if I have a solid rule. I usually start with some sturdier stems when I put them down, continue to pile things. If it's a more delicate flower like a ranuncula or something that's really small, like those little chamomile, which are like the white with like the yellow centers, I'll sometimes leave those a little bit taller than the rest of the flower. So that way they will like pop out. And I think I still like really like neat symmetrical arrangements. So when you're doing that, you kind of want the outer ones to be a little shorter and for everything to get gradually taller towards the center. But if you're aiming for something that feels like a more wildflower organic look, which is definitely trendier, then as you place those flowers down, if you vary the heights, you'll get something that feels that way.
Yeah.
And I think, this is probably the most helpful thing I could have said. As you're arranging your flowers, don't look at the stems, look at the blooms. I think I often, because you're touching the stems, that's like what my eye goes to, but actually keeping your eye on that like final bloom piece as you're laying them down is super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of trust the like puzzle pieces as they fit together, right? Because there is like definitely something that comes together as you're arranging where I feel like you can look at it and it's like, that's not the right piece right there. You know what I mean? That's not quite right. Or, that totally nailed it. Whatever that, like a spider mom has its moment, to shine, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Also, sometimes like you just have to trust the process. Like the flowers are pretty. It's gonna look good. You can't mess it up that much.
Yeah. Well, I would love to like just journey a little bit into the more advanced range. So, what is like kind of more wild? Like, let's say you're going in there and you might have a few different vessels at home that you could use. You are thinking about this little urn shaped thing, or maybe, I've seen like some pumpkins that, some gourds, that sort of thing. But like, what would you suggest for someone who's willing to take a few more risks outside of kind of like going with what they like? What kind of advice could you give them to like really think outside the box?
Yeah, sometimes, especially when I'm kind of feeling like nothing's looking great, like when I've had a week or so where I'm like, oh, these look like kind of all the arrangements I've made, but they don't look like, none of them give you that like, oh, this is a good one feeling. I'll usually force myself to buy something that I either never have bought or like really rarely use. So like whatever that flower is for you. And sometimes that's like, for me, like Protea, I don't buy so often. Like they're super cool and interesting, but they're almost, I use like what I call like a texture scale where there's like the really fluffy flowers and there's the more structured ones and there's like the prickly ones. And I think the fluffy ones often like feel romantic to me and the structured ones feel elegant. And then the prickly ones add like whimsy and character, but they can sometimes like take over a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'll sometimes like push myself to buy something really spiky or just something I haven't gotten. Like I don't buy Alistrameria very often. I think it has such a long vase life, which is amazing. They'll last for forever, but I think part of that is also you get them and they're kind of closed. And then some of my other flowers are already open, so like they're opening at different times. So buy something you don't usually get and then start there, put that as the first one in your cart, and then start pairing it with some other things and see what comes together. And I usually end up having a good time. And sometimes it's even like one of my new favorites, but it'll unlock something creatively, which is always fun. So
yeah.
Do you go with colors that you're drawn to in the day? Or do you, I mean, you might have a little bit more of like, I need to keep this palette fresh, but I find myself like, if I'm going to be honest, if I'm standing in front of like, you know, maybe there's a lot of options in front of me at Trader Joe's. I find myself gravitating towards like the crimsons and the, you know, like eggplant colors and just like deep magentas, those sorts of things. Very rarely am I like, I want to rock that orange bloom. You know, I mean, sometimes, but orange and yellow feel like they're just kind of like off for me, off like my typical purchasing patterns. But how do you think about color when it comes to like taking some of these risks or the creative aspect?
Yeah, so there's a lot of color theory that you could do a deep dive on, and I am a nerd and definitely have. But I think thinking about kind of more like whether a palette is warm or cool is sometimes even more helpful than thinking about the actual color, because you could have a purple that's almost like a cooler purple that feels very blue heavy or a warmer one that feels very red heavy, and making sure that you're using a mix of more warm colors or more cool colors will make your bouquet feel more cohesive. And you can always break that rule, but that flower will probably jump out at you. So just just know that, and that's fine too. So I do that. I also sometimes analogous color palettes are helpful, which is kind of the three colors on the color wheel that are next to each other. So I also have a really hard time with yellow. I don't know why, but I think I'll creep into orange more, but like when it's next to the red and purple, and then I'll like throw in a peach to get me like a little bit closer. And if you're stuck, monochromatic bouquets are beautiful. So just like pick one color and do that, because that's also an easy way to go. I did a whole monochromatic chapter in my book, and I think my editor wasn't quite sure because it was a little different from some of the other chapters that I had. And I was like, no, I think this one will be helpful. And like some of those bouquets, like the green one, and I just said I almost never buy greens, is one of my favorites. I'm like, oh, this is so fun.
Yeah, I love that. When you think about flowers that, I mean, you mentioned like you shy away from Protea. What is like your absolute favorite flower to work with? Like, what is something that you're like, oh, this is always a winner for me?
Of the Trader Joe's flowers, definitely ranunculus. Like I when they're there, like even if I wasn't buying flowers or that bunch matches nothing else that's in my cart, I'm like, okay, we're buying some of these, maybe two or three, because I can't seem to resist them. Do you have a favorite?
I was gonna say, I think it's the peonies. Like when they have peonies and they're like, you just know they're gonna burst. You know, I'm like, oh, I can't resist those ever. Yeah,
you're definitely not alone. I've like seen people can get into some fights over a good bunch in there. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, maybe more Manhattan than the Midwest, though. yeah.
For sure. For sure. So you are arranging and you start to post. Tell me about just the serendipitous moment of like creating an online community through this, because I think that's just a curiosity that I have of just community in general, but also community around beauty.
Yeah, I feel like when I pause and realize, I feel so lucky. I think just like the world, the internet can sometimes be a tough place to be. And
Mhm.
it's so lucky that like my page is just happy. Like people, it's just other people who like flowers. And I know that I crave a space where people who might not agree on absolutely everything can just have ease and common ground. And I feel really lucky to like be able to be towards the center of that. So like I get reminded of it daily, which is like such a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also clearly love talking about flowers. So thank you for indulging that crazy conversation. And it's so nice to just have people send me pictures of flowers all day. So like I'll just open my account. It's like, oh, I made this. I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. Thank you for sharing that with me. And it's just
I
really
mean,
fun.
is it accurate to say like basically daily people are tagging you
Yeah.
in things that you've inspired? Isn't that about right?
Yeah. 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 It's fun because it's just like, oh, I get to look at pictures of flowers.
That is amazing. I mean, that's one of the things I love about following you and just seeing what people are posting and what people are inspired by. It's like it feels like such an access point for folks. You know, this podcast is really, I think the people who are listening have definite creative veins, you know, and they're working either with words, some with color, some with a combination of both. But I really do think that the community around it is one of the most beautiful parts, you know, and so that's a really fun way to follow you and just see what you're doing in the world as the community that you're building.
Oh, thank you. I needed that creative outlet so much, and it's been so nice to be able to also remind people that it doesn't have to be so hard. You can bring creativity into your everyday life in small, easy ways. And for me, it brings such joy. So it's nice to
Yeah.
have other people who feel like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm wondering about this book deal. Like, where along the way does this crop up in your like? Do you receive an email? Like, how did that happen?
I got a DM from an editor, and I was like, I I know this is such a privileged thing to say. I am definitely someone who sees value in my creative practices and really enjoys it. I am not someone who thinks of themselves as a writer. So it had never been kind of on my bucket list.
Mhm.
And when I saw it, I was like, oh, I was just surprised. And I was like, hopefully this will be fun. And then it happened really organically, which was super lucky. And yeah, she just sent me a DM. We had a couple of conversations. They had me put together like a rough outline for the book for approval purposes and some budget stuff in terms of photo shoots. And then they sent me a contract, and it was pretty straightforward.
Wow. What was the like? Were you actually? I just can't even.
Yeah,
Like outside of
it
like
was
Martha
wild.
Stewart in the '90s, I'm like, what is making a flower book like? You know? So you create this outline, and that feels really fun, right? That had to have been a fun process.
Oh, yeah. The outline was super fun. And then for me, the most fun was the photo shoots. Because I think now that I know a little bit more about writing a book, I think most people probably write a book, and then if there is photography, then they do the photos. So even if it's like a cookbook, you're doing all your recipe development and then you do the photography. But it was really important to me that the flowers came from Trader Joe's. So I kind of laid out the recipe, like what the like occasion would be or the type of bouquet. So if it was like we're doing monochromatic ones, I knew like all the colors I needed to hit. But then we scheduled out 3 photo shoots, and some of what we were filming was dictated based on what I found. Like there was one day where I went to 5 different Trader Joe's in one day before a photo shoot, like around the city. And I was like, oh, I really hope I can find like whatever this flower was.
Yeah.
And then I'm so lucky to have a really good friend who came and helped me clean all the leaves off of all of those insane number of flowers. And then an amazing photographer who if you do see the book, more than half of it goes to him because he made everything look amazing. And he was so fun to work with. That was just such a lucky, cool process. It's like really that process of taking what's in your head and making it real visually, which is super cool.
Yeah. Am I hearing you right in that you would actually like create some of the bouquets and then use that for the content in terms of the writing?
Yes. So I had them laid out. So there's different chapters. So there's a monochromatic chapter where it's by color. So I knew I needed a red bouquet and an orange bouquet, but the specific flowers that were in it weren't always laid out. And there's like an everyday bouquet section where some of it's by price point. So I knew I was within a certain price point, or I knew I was doing a bedside bouquet, which is like similar to one that I do a lot, and my bathroom one, which is similar to one that I do a lot. So those, I was like, okay, I'll find within these colors or this range. And I was like, okay, those I know. I know that they'll always have this color spray roses or whatever. But some of the other ones, like the bridal shower bouquet selection, I was like, okay, like I had an idea and they just didn't have what I was looking for. So the idea shifted, which is probably pretty indicative of what might happen if that's what you're going out to try to do with the Trader Joe's flowers. So it was nice to have that as like the goal. And then I went back and wrote out the actual recipes after.
Was there a sticking point or a hard part of the writing process, or anything where you got a little, like, not to say thorn in your side, but something like that?
Yeah. So it's structured like a cookbook, but you know how at the beginning of each recipe in a cookbook, you have to like write a little something. And I joked with my brother. I was like, I feel like I'm writing 50 like mini college essays where I have to take something so tiny and make it sound important and interesting. And sometimes I was like, I like tried to have fun with it. Sometimes I was like, I think I'm taking myself a little too seriously. Like, this is ridiculous. So some of those were a little tough, but hopefully people are in it for the pictures at least half as much as those little essays.
Yeah. Well, and just like I can do that, or that's a great idea with what I have here. What are you most proud of with the book?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if most proud, but another thing that was also really fun for me was we kind of ran out of time and budget on the photo shoots. So the instructions, we didn't really have time to film the instructions and get all the other shots we were hoping to get. So I ended up illustrating like those to go side by side, which was like a really fun throwback for me. And I think something that was a little bit intimidating. So I was like, ooh, I haven't done anything like this in super long. And like, I'm putting that out there, but it was surprisingly fun to do and like get back into a groove of something like that. And also just to put like that whole like picture together of something I created creatively is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this time capsule, right? There's like, we have these like online versions of this, but I think something about a book, it's the same for other types of writers and other types of writing, where you might be like publishing poetry on Substack or on Instagram in these micro bite-sized pieces, like your bouquets, bouquet by bouquet, right? Like I love the way you film, like how you put it together, and then it's like, voila, it's like, voila. But then to see it all compiled and like to hold the precious thing, I think is like a really sweet part of the process that I think you should be proud of.
Oh, thank you. Are you a writer also?
Yes. Yeah, I am. This podcast was born out of my writing group is now 21 years old, but it was turning 20. And I was like, it felt like something so sacred that we were doing month after month in just a community and circle. And I was like, so many people would benefit from hearing the beauty that is being created here, And so that's how the podcast came to be. And even the title By Firelight, very often we are sitting by a fire or by candlelight. And so it was like, let's just pull people in and make this circle a little bit wider. So yes, awesome. I am a writer. It's interesting. I'm going to share something very vulnerable here, but I was in therapy today, and my therapist, we were talking about what I call shoulding on myself, like, like I should be doing something.
And we started talking about writing because the producers of the podcast have been encouraging me gently and nudging me lovingly, like, hey, it could be time for you to like push something out like a little bit more publicly in the form of a book. And if people like my regular listeners, which there are a couple of people out there that I know are regular, and you know, they've heard me say I compiled some poetry and I was like, I don't know if this is it. And then I had this idea that I was working with for a while that I'm moving away from, but it was like vignettes of dating in my 40s, which that book was like, it's a draft out there that I think I needed to get out of my system, but it was called Whatever Happened with Hot Dad. And it was just like,
that's awesome.
It was kind of like, it was funny. And I'm like, I don't think that's what I want to put out either. Right. And so most recently, and I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but most recently I had this idea that I'm really toying with, and that is a concept of living eulogies. So writing, yeah, like, and there's something about it for me and like my millions of different personality types, which is like, well, I'm a generator on human design and I'm a 7 on the Enneagram and I'm this and I'm that. But like, it's really important that I like find some spark and excitement with what I'm working on. And this feels like, okay, like this makes me want to get up and write early in the morning, or it keeps me up at night where I'm thinking like, because my concept right now, sorry, I'm really expanding this answer to this question, but
please.
The concept that I'm working with right now is like, what if I take a year and focus on one woman a week for a year? And so I'm almost 50. So taking 50 weeks, 50 different people, and really just for that week, focus on this friendship, focus on this connection, focus on this person, sort of the genesis of the connection, and what I would literally say if they passed, but they're alive.
I love that.
Oh, thank you. I'm like, it actually is really like, it's really sparking me. It's like really exciting to me. So I'm getting some traction with it with my writing. So
that's amazing. I love that it's contained to just like, if you have to do 50, you have to do it in a week. I think that I'm the type of person that does really well with structure and guardrails, in case that hasn't come through. And I think having a project like that is just such a good capsule of like what that is in the moment, and just watching that happen. I think, I did listen to a couple of your podcasts, and I also have something of a yoga background. And one of the things, I did Ashtanga for a little over 10 years. And one of the things that I learned from that is kind of, if you keep showing up every day, things will change, which is kind of the opposite of what I think we're taught. They always say like, oh, doing the same thing over and over again is insanity. Expect a different result. But actually, if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get better at it and learn something. And I love that you're kind of doing that same thing, but in a slightly different way. I'm excited to read it.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's always a good feeling, because when people are like, that's a lot of people felt that way about Whatever Happened with Hot Dad. They were like, oh, I want that one. I was like, yeah, I apparently can't do that one right now, not at this point in my life, but maybe the living eulogies, and I have to figure out exactly how to think about the title of that, because I don't really want it to go down like I want it to stay in the light, if that makes sense.
I love brainstorming, so chuck this, obviously, but eulogies are also kind of love letters.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Rachel. Okay, well, we have gone, I think we've done all the lanes that I was thinking about in terms of talking about your amazing community. I do want to give just a moment to, you mentioned the Zoom classes and some of the opportunities for people to connect with you. So is that one way where people, if they're listening to this and they're like, okay, I want a little more of that, is that a way to connect with you?
Yeah, Zoom classes, my book, which is out and available in all places, and also just send me a DM, share a bouquet that you made. I love seeing flowers, so I'm always inspired by the more things that I see, so please keep sending them. It makes me really happy.
Yeah, we'll add all these links in the show notes. I wanted to kind of close with a little bit of a rapid fire, which is no pressure. No, these are not high stakes here, but I'm curious before the rapid fire was there anything, like I was looking at your bouquets, is there anyone that you're like shocked has gotten like, I don't know, you have some with millions of views, like is there anything that has surprised you in terms of, or things that like you thought would really take off and didn't? Like, is there anything like that?
It's a good question. I think one of my first really viral bouquets was a Valentine's bouquet from 2 years ago, which is just pink roses and chamomile. And I think I was definitely surprised because I also had like, I definitely had like probably one or two other reels that had hit like 1 million, but it was still early on. I didn't have, I don't know, maybe I had 10,000 followers. So, and that one did really well. But then the part that was like the most surprising was, and if anyone's trying to grow a social media presence, know that it can happen really quickly when the algorithm hits, because that reel alone gave me over 50,000 followers. So just like keep doing it. And it's kind of good news if no one sees it, because that means no one saw it. So if they didn't like it, you don't need to feel bad. No one even saw it. So some of the ones that like, I'm like, oh, this was so good. And then like, it doesn't take off. I'm like, well, clearly your taste was off from everybody else's. So don't worry about it that much.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think about, and I know I just said we were going to rapid fire, and this is a little bit of a deeper question, but like, how do you encourage somebody who's maybe feeling a little vulnerable to begin? Like anything, right? Maybe it's me and my living eulogies. No, but maybe it's, yeah, just somebody who's kind of like wanting to venture. I mean, I can just picture kind of the state of your soul in this health tech job, and then trying to experiment with something. Like there is a place and space that's such a sweet spot right there. Like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. What works for me really well when I'm kind of in that place and like a little bit curious, but not quite sure, I like to commit to doing something for 30 days. So you don't have to necessarily do it every day, but it's kind of like, I'm going to do this 3 times a week for 30 days, whatever it is. And don't think about anything more than that. You're just going to do it. And if you don't like it after those 30 days, it's probably not for you. And that's fine. And if you do, like, make your next benchmark for yourself. So it's kind of freeing sometimes to make that decision, because then you just go. And if it's not good, it doesn't matter, because all that mattered was that you did it.
Yeah. Oh, that is it. That's a great wise word for the creatives out here and those listening. I really love that. Okay. A rapid fire. I promise. We kind of do this in the like quick writes in my writing group, where we just sit down and we just go with it. So I'm curious, underrated flower. What would you say?
Carnations. They can survive an apocalypse, and they're they're pretty, and they come in all the colors, and they're one of the cheapest ones.
Overrated flower.
Ooh, I don't know. I've learned to like almost all of them. When I first started, I didn't like roses for that reason. I felt like they were really overrated, and I don't know if it's just that they're always at Trader Joe's, and some days that was the only choice. Now I really do like them and appreciate them, but they're not the most interesting to me.
Yeah, I gotcha. How do you feel? Sidebar on the
Yeah.
campfire. How do you feel about those country roses?
So, okay, I'm gonna Trader Joe's. They're not always country roses, and you can find regular roses that are the same and mixed up, but they often do have more petals and texture. But you get 4 less of them in the bunch. So decide what you're looking for.
Okay, that's a good tip. What are flowers for a bad day?
If a friend's having a bad day, and they're ranunculus, I would definitely go for those.
Okay. How about this is like this is a little bit of a stretch, but like flowers for inspiring something bold or a new beginning. What's going to say like congrats?
Well, if it's like a graduation or something, anything that's tied to like a color story, I try to like tie it into that. So if somebody's graduating from something, or even if they're like starting a job, you can like tie to the logo, or at least the packaging afterwards is kind of a fun nod, or my card. I've taken to buying plain white envelopes, and then I line them myself with like a fun paper. So sometimes like the Trader Joe's bag, but also like you could do like a congratulations like wrapping paper or something fun to tie it together.
it. Oh, well, and what final words? What have you not said that you would love to say to someone listening who is just maybe sparked and inspired by a lighter conversation this time of year?
Buy yourself some flowers and buy some for a friend because it's fun. And if flowers aren't your thing, a warm drink for yourself and a friend, I think always makes me smile.
Love it. I think this episode is going to make a lot of people smile, and it certainly has for me. Thank you so much for your time, Rachel, and the beauty that you inspire and create.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for making my first podcast talking about myself this much smooth. I really appreciate how open and easy you are to talk to. So thanks.
By Firelight is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Jamie Gale and Betsy Delzer. Music is by Legito Music and Pond 5. Thank you for being a part of our beautiful collection of stories.